Hello, I'm your teacher Jim today. I'm currently teaching 5th and 6th grade in ILE의 Academy. Today's lesson will be about science. We'll talk about human body system. When it comes to human body, there's so much to talk about. And two main things we'll talk about today is different levels of organization, starting from the smallest, cells. When group of cells come together, we call them tissues. When group of tissue comes together, we call them organs, and series of organs, we call them organ systems. And then we'll focus on one particular organ system called circulatory system. An organ system that circulates blood that not only carries nutrients but also waste. So let's dive in. So let's start from the basics. When we build cities, we first build buildings and houses, like this. When we build houses, we design each rooms, like this. When we design rooms, we build walls, like this. When we build walls, we stack up bricks. Human body is organized in a very similar way. Of course, we're not houses, so we're not built with bricks, but we're built with structure of what's called cells. Cells are basic unit of life. In other words, every living thing that we know, organisms, starting from the smallest bacteria, from birds, fish, mammals, including humans, we're all made up of cells. Now, organisms that are made up of single cells, like bacteria, we call them unicellular organisms, while organisms that are made up of many cells, like humans, mammals, we call ourselves multicellular organisms. As a matter of fact, an average of cells of a human body is about 100 trillion cells, and that's a lot of cells. We can categorize cells into two different parts. First, we see an animal cell. Second, we see a plant cell. Major difference between two cells are the shape, first of all. The animal cell is more spherical and it's more round, whereas the plant cell is more rigid and it's more brick-like. Not only the shape, but also the structures inside the cells differ. The structures that we see inside cells are called organelles. They're like the organs of cells, organelles. And one main difference that we see is this structure called chloroplast. This green structure, this green organelle collects sunlight. Because plants can do something very special that animals can't, called photosynthesis. Plants can collect sunlight through an organelle called chloroplast, and it collects water and CO2, carbon dioxide, to make a type of sugar called glucose, in other words, grape sugar, along with oxygen. This process is called photosynthesis. And another structure that is different is the vacuole. The vacuole is bigger in the plant cell, whereas the animal's vacuole is smaller. The vacuoles are the storage area. It can store nutrients that the cells make, or it can store waste or water. Because plants can't just go around and get water when it needs. It has bigger vacuole. It has to wait until it rains. It has to wait until the sun rises. So that's another difference. And lastly, the cell wall. The cell wall consists of cellulose, and cellulose is what makes cell walls rigid. So if you imagine fruits or vegetables like carrots and onions, they're crunchy when you chew on it. Whereas animals like beef, pork are more soft and chewy. That's because of the cellulose that makes up the cell walls. So now we know what cells are. Cells are basic unit of life. When group of cells are put together, we call them tissues. Group of similar cells. And there are four main different types of tissue. There are four different types of tissues. So the four main types of tissues are muscle tissue, nervous tissue, connective tissue, epithelial tissue. The muscle tissue, as you can see, works in pairs. When I open my arm like this, the upper muscle will relax while my under muscles will contract. And when I fold my arm, the upper muscle will contract and my lower muscle will relax. That's how the muscle tissue works. The nervous tissue, it carries out electrical messages called impulse. Now the impulse is the way how our body communicates between our brain and our body. And the nervous tissue carries out the impulse. The connective tissue forms and structures our body. The main two types of connective tissues are the bone tissues and our fat tissues. Lastly, the epithelial tissue is the outer surface of our body. Like our internal organs, the surface of the organ separates it from other organs, and our skin is also consisting of many epithelial tissue. Now knowing what tissues are, when four different tissues are put together, we call them organs. Group of different tissues. So one of our main organs is our heart. Our heart contains all four tissues, muscle tissue, because our heart needs to contract and squeeze the blood out. And it also contains connective tissue. It needs to retain its shape and form. The epithelial tissue, it needs a surface to separate from other organs. Lastly, the nervous tissue. Our brain orders our heart when to beat faster, when to beat slower. Same thing for our stomach. Our stomach carries out a process called digestion. Digestion is a process of breaking food down small enough. And the stomach does it. The stomach needs to churn the food that we swallow. It needs to mix and squeeze the food and liquidize the food using the muscle tissue. And then it also needs to retain its shape. That's why it has connective tissue, the outer surface of the stomach, epithelial tissue, and then our brain orders our stomach when to work. That's why our stomach has nervous tissue as well. So when these organs are working together, these series of organs, system of organs, we call them organ systems. Group of organs that work together. There are many organ systems that our bodies consist of, starting with skeletal system, circulatory system, respiratory system, digestive system, excretory system, and nervous system. All of these organ systems consist of many, many organs, starting with the skeletal system. This consists of your skull that protects your brain, your ribs that protects your internal organs, your spines, your backbones are part of the skeletal system. They are the main organs. The circulatory system, its job is to circulate blood that carries out the nutrients and the waste that it got. And the heart pumps the blood through the blood vessels. That's why the three main organs are the heart, blood vessel, and the blood. The respiratory system's job is to get oxygen through inhalation and then exhale carbon dioxide by exhalation. That's why the main organs are your nose, your windpipe, and your lungs. We also have digestive system, and its purpose is to digest food, to break food small enough so that it enters our blood, so that the circulatory system can carry that blood and release the nutrients that it got through the food that we have consumed. The main organs would be your mouth and your esophagus, which is the tube that connects your mouth to your stomach. And then your stomach, it churns the food and mixes with stomach acid and liquidizes the food. And once the food that you have consumed is soft enough, it'll flow into your small intestines, where most of the absorption takes place. So the food will enter your bloodstream, and the remaining food in your small intestines will enter your large intestines, where most of the water will be absorbed, and then the remaining waste will be compressed into your rectum and leave your body through anus, which is the exit of our body. Then we have excretory system. The role of the excretory system, it filters waste, collects waste, and excretes, it disposes waste. So how does it do it? Our kidneys filter waste through two steps. One, like I said, our blood contains not only nutrients, but also waste. Our kidneys filter needed materials with waste. That's the first stage. Second stage, it releases the needed materials back into our blood. So then what's left is the waste that our body does not need is sent to our urinary bladder, and we pee it out in the bathroom. So that's the excretory system's job. The main organs are the kidneys. The nervous system, the most important organ system, because it controls all the rest of the organ system, and it also helps us detect our surroundings. So our brain and our spinal cord is the main organs of the nervous system. Whenever we go new places, we detect our surroundings and we detect our environment by seeing things, by seeing lights, or by smelling through the chemicals in air, or by tasting things through the chemicals in the food that we consume, or by feeling things with our skin. We detect different pressure points using our skin, and also we hear sounds through the vibration of air. So all that information is called stimuli, the changing of the environment. It's all collected, it all transfers into electrical message called impulse. It travels through the nervous tissue, reaches our brain interprets it, and it sends a new impulse to our muscles, and we respond to our surroundings. So that's the main job of the nervous system. So the organ system that I want to focus on today is our circulatory system. And in order to understand how our circulatory system works, we have to understand how our heart works first. So two things we have to know first is, first of all, we see that this side, you have to imagine you're behind this picture. So this side is the right side, and that side is your left side. All of the right side is blue. It's because the blue blood is the oxygen-poor blood, and the red side is the oxygen-rich blood. So keep that in mind. And second, you Your heart contains two different types of chambers. The receiving chamber. The receiving chamber receives the blood outside of the heart. We call them atria. And then there's a sending chamber that squeezes the blood out of the heart. We call them ventricles. The upper part of the heart we see right atrium and left atrium. And then the lower part of the heart is the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Now knowing this, let's see how our blood circulates through our circulatory system. So, when the blood circulates our body, it'll give off the oxygen that it acquired, and also it'll collect carbon dioxide. So the oxygen-rich blood, which is also carbon dioxide-poor blood, will turn into oxygen-poor blood, carbon dioxide-rich blood. So that's what happens when you see the bottom part of this diagram. The red blood turns into purple, turns into blue. The oxygen-poor blood now will flow into the receiving chamber, the right atrium, and then the right atrium will squeeze the blood into the right ventricle. The right ventricle will squeeze the blood out, and guess where will the blood go? It'll go into your lung capillaries. So we'll end our lecture here. I hope this was informative, and I'll see you all later. Goodbye.